Good afternoon. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located. This is Cindy from CPSE, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, DoD and Civilian Perspectives on Data Management for Accreditation Success with Emergency Reporting. I am pleased to introduce Tom Lewis, Emergency Reporting's Business Development Analyst. Tom retired as a battalion chief from the Green Valley Fire District in Arizona in 2013 after serving for 22 years. He joined emergency reporting in 2011 as a trainer, teaching throughout the United States and in many countries around the world. He graduated summa cum laude from Arizona State University with a Bachelor of Applied Science degree in Fire Service Management. Tom is an avid reader, loves classic and modern Mopar muscle cars, and has a soft spot for retired racing greyhounds. At the end of the webinar, please contact Emergency Reporting directly for additional information and be sure to visit their booth at the 2021 Excellence Conference, March 2nd through 5th at the Caribe Royale Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. Thank you all for attending, and now Tom will begin the webinar.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Cindy, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm very pleased to be with all of you today, and you're kind of lucky today, everyone, because I'm just going to moderate and facilitate questions because we have two accreditation experts from both coasts. We have Pete Korodini from Camp Pendleton, the Marine Corps Fire and Emergency Services in California, and we have Rich Loewer from Mount Dora Fire Department in Florida. So we've got both the DoD perspective and the civilian perspective, as the title of today's presentation shows you. So without further ado, let's make some additional introductions to the speakers today.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Pete Korodini. I am at Camp Pendleton. I've been serving at Camp Pendleton since 2006. Prior to that, I did some forestry firefighting. Been total fire service now for 19 years. Hold an MBA from Cal State Long Beach. Accreditation and wise, I've been involved with our department's accreditation efforts since 2012. I was appointed our accreditation manager in 2016, and I've been spearheading that effort ever since. And just excited here to share some of the info and some of the insights that I've gained since 2012.
Right on, Pete. Thank you very much. All right, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say here in just a few minutes, so thank you. Next up, we've got Rich.
Hey, everyone. As Tom said, I'm Rich Loewer, work for Mount Dora Fire Department. I've been here since March of 2005, so just hit 15 years. Tom and I met, we've been customers with emergency reporting since 2017, I believe. And our department, been the accreditation manager for a few years. We started going through the process of initial accreditation in 2016. We just got accredited this past March. We're lucky enough to go before the commission before all this COVID stuff happened. So we're a first-time accredited agency. And I met Tom a few years ago at FDIC, you know, a small department where everybody's basically doing everything. I had gone to him just at his booth at FDIC and established a friendship and a working relationship, just trying to learn how we, at the time we were customers of emergency reporting, how we were able to get through this process with emergency reporting's help. So it's been an excellent thing and an excellent relationship.
Awesome, and congratulations on your new promotion to Deputy Chief, Rich.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
It's exciting. All right, guys, this is me. Don't worry about me today. I'm your host and moderator. But what I do want you to worry about is if you look in the GoToWebinar control panel down at the bottom under handouts, we've just got a brochure about who we are in emergency reporting. It's a PDF. Please download it, peruse it. If you've got any other questions, we'll be here to answer those for you, either at the end of today's session or even as a follow-up. So today's discussion, perspectives on the value of effective, emphasis on effective data management from both Department of Defense and civilian agencies. And we've got two experts with us today that are going to tell their story. They're going to share it with you, talk about some of the pitfalls and challenges, and show you some of the data that they were able to mine to help them through the accreditation process. We know it's not an easy process. I've been there. I've been to the conference and see the sweat and the stress during the sessions, the evaluation sessions that the departments go through, everybody in their Class A's and dress uniforms, and it's a privilege to be part of that. So these two guys went through it, and they can tell you the story here as we press on. So first up is going to be Pete. Pete hails from the Camp Pendleton, as you can see there. And Pete, I'm going to head into the first slide for you.
There we go. All right. Thank you very much there, Tom. So all you guys know, this is my first time doing this. I think I like doing it much more in person. It's more of just like hosting a conversation, just a lot of back and forth. I understand it's going to be kind of hard in the setup that we have right now, but regardless of that, I'm going to do my best. If you guys have any questions or anything, just let myself or Tom know, and we will try to find you the answers. One of the biggest things that we really wanted to express and to emphasize, it really doesn't matter if you are a federal fire department, a city, a local government, state, whatnot. What we all bring in the services that we provide, we are all pretty much looking at, exploring, and trying to figure out the best way of providing all these services. With that being said, most of the time we are going and looking at things such as response times. How fast are we getting from 911 till we show up at Mrs. Smith's house? How many calls are we going on? Are we doing more structure fires? Are we doing more medical? Are we doing more technical rescue? So these things are all important things that we should be looking at. But some of the things that we really need to focus on as fire service leaders are the outcomes. If we show up to a scene of a structure fire and we show up there in 4.5 minutes, but it takes us 15 minutes to get water on the fire, how effective are we? What's the outcome going to be? Are we burning down homes and buildings, or are we saving them and keeping the fire to a point of origin? If we show up with an ambulance in 4 minutes and we do not have the right equipment, tools, and training to help out a cardiac patient, how effective is really showing up in 4 minutes? So these are the things that we are looking at, specifically at Pendleton, but this could be the same for every city, every county, every state fire agency. All right, next slide there, Tom, please. So like I was saying there, outcomes, stats that we often use for reporting purposes and accreditation purposes, such as like the 90th percentile and effective response force. Unless you truly understand what that all means and why that is important, it's probably not going to mean a whole lot. So things that we should be expressing to our public, to our community, are the percentages, such as if we stopped a fire in the room of origin, how much are we costing? Are we costing 3 or 4 times more than a similar size agency? And cardiac arrest, let's face it, EMS is probably most of our business, and cardiac arrest, it seems like I don't know too many agencies who are really getting this and getting down into the weeds and really tracking what their survival rate is, and then what is your quality of life after the event. Something that we're doing down in San Diego is We have a PCR system that can go and track everything from the time that our paramedics showed up on scene till a patient is released from the hospital. You know, that's something that we should be looking at and incorporating into our daily business, into our whole planning and goals and setting for the fire department.
Pete, I got a question for you. I want to ask you. So when I see a slide like this, it tells so much to me as far as all the data and the reports are going to be valuable internally, but what you're saying is that you've got to be able to tell your story when I see that phrase meaningful to the community. So it's all meaningful to the agency, but telling your story and have its meaningfulness to the community there, because I see your last sentence down at the bottom, doing more with less. And we know that that's happening in the civilian world big time now, especially with the potential budgetary effects during and post-COVID. Where have you had success in telling your story to the Camp Pendleton community and being able to address that, doing more with less and still getting the support of the community? Do you have an example there?
Sure do. So that was kind of what I was going to wrap this all up with is so we at Pendleton are faced right now, we are funded at about 35% of what we should be. And that is just based on federal funding levels, and we get a lot of funding throughout the fiscal year. You know, so if we are not selling this, if we are not selling why we are important and what the outcomes are to not just the residents, but to our governing body, we got to sell to them, you know, and if we are not funded right, basically, we are not able to go and provide the services that we are supposed to be doing. So we've had some success by showing that, hey, we do not have our fire stations in the correct locations. We are actually, we have just begun construction on a new fire station 4, you know, and those efforts began back in about 2016. So it took us about 4 years of trying to sell this and show that we are not meeting our time standards. And a lot of the driving factor behind that is we did have a fatality fire within that station's area. And that was really pretty much like the eye opener for the Marine Corps. Some of the other things that we've had successes with are we're now replacing three out of our 4 ambulances have all been replaced in the last about 2.5 years. Additionally, we've gotten increased funding for tools, equipment, things that we needed, but you know, if we don't show that why we need it, why this is important, you know, how this is going to affect our community, it's pretty much just like those days of, hey, we're the fire department, we should just get all the money. Those days are all gone. So next slide, please. So for us here at excuse me a second. For us at Pendleton, you know, we started this whole process back in 2012. At the time, I was a lieutenant, and my job at the time was on our technical rescue team. I worked on that. I thought that was the best job in the world. And I said, you know what, we are professional. We know what we're doing. We're the best rescue team out there. The fire chief at the time, he said, well, show me how, why. Well, we weren't really able to show him. You know, I was like, well, because we train a lot. We have all these fancy tools and equipment. We are the best team out there. And he's like, yeah, but how can we articulate that to our public and to our governing body? Well, we hadn't done any of this work. We haven't looked at any of the data, any of the risk that we were taking. So it all began in 2012 for us, at least. And it really started by figuring out what are we doing, how are we doing it, where do we need to improve, and what are the things that we are doing right. That cannot be done without looking at data, and that's really the whole driving force behind a lot of this. We solicited input, from the public that we serve and from some other agencies, not just other fire agencies, but we were looking at our public works department, who support our stations, the infrastructure on the base. We're looking at our shop. For us, the shop where all of our apparatus are fixed is not a just fire department shop. So they are a stakeholder within our department. So these are the things that we started to look at and plan. Hey, we have apparatus that are out of service 3 or 4 months out of the year. Why is that? Hey, we have stations that the phone systems and station alerting are not working. So these are all things that we have been looking at, but they would have not been able to find out all this information if it were not for data, and the things that we need to understand is that the entire fire service, and as we're leading through all this, we need to be able to articulate and demonstrate why and how we do everything, if that makes sense.
Pete, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And then that last sentence there, one of the things I want to mention as people look at that last sentence on your slide, the how to articulate your department's performance and outcomes to all involved. And I just want to make note that, and maybe we can get this to people, but the Marine Corps Fire and Emergency Services does a particularly good job with their annual report in compiling the data in a very digestible way that makes it easy for the layperson. So not data guys like all of us on the call today that can get into it and really deep dive it. You got to tell your story and articulate, like Pete says, articulate your department's performance to all outcomes and outcomes to all involved, and knowing your audience. And I think an annual report is a particularly good tool for that, and to get that buy-in, as the slide says, from everyone. But you've got to be able to make it understandable to them and put yourself into their shoes. And I think Pete, your department, and in particular, and certainly the entire Marine Corps, does a great job with that. So I just wanted to throw that in there before we go to the next slide.
Okay. No, thank you for that, Tom. Yeah, that is something that we send out as the Marine Corps. It gets sent out once a year, but local to us, we do a monthly newsletter, and in there we excuse me, we go and publish such items as human resources events. Is somebody getting hired? How many people have we hired? We go and publish things as far as our budget. What have we executed budget-wise? If we're getting some new apparatus, and then I go and publish all of our performance data. The stats, the call volume, the times. So these are all things that we are doing once a month, and they get sent out to the entire fire department. But that report isn't really just for the fire department. That report gets sent out to everyone there on the base, all of the COs and CGs on the base. It goes to the Pentagon as well. And so we get folks who are seeing our stats and seeing the information that we are publishing once a month. I think that has really helped us succeed in communicating, hey, this is what Pendleton is doing, this is some of their successes, but also some of the areas that we need to improve on. So we are constantly reaching out to all those folks.
And so, Pete, these reports here are just some of the examples of what we're going to talk about in the next couple slides of where you're extracting this data in easy and meaningful ways that you're then able to compile and assess ways, those outcomes you mentioned basically. And these are just some of the reports I know you shared that you found beneficial. Is there anything of these 5 that you want to mention before we move to the next slide?
You know, specifically to these, not really. These are all, you know, what would be great there if we had one report that can just go and generate, you know, all the stats, all of our, you know, stats, response times, the incident types, building risks, our CAD stuff. If we had one report that could go and explain all that or show all that information, that would be great. But real world, that doesn't really happen. That doesn't exist, you know. So what I do at Pendleton is I use a combination of about 4 or 5 to 6 reports, depending on what I'm doing. But the one that I would say is really specific to just the federal fire departments is report number 1500. And that's just going to go and it's going to give you a count of DoD call volume and categories. And they have specific to, you know, to structural, medical, hazmat, and flight line operations.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. There we go.
Yes. Okay, so for me, I take a lot of these reports and I drop them into an Excel spreadsheet. You know, something that we have been looking at, and how can we improve what we're doing is the standard that we have is to respond to all incidents, structural, medical, hazmat, and rescue within 7 minutes. We at Pendleton, we have not been able to meet that 7-minute standard. I think one of our FTZs can make it. So
and Pete, let me interrupt real quick here. That's the key to take away is that that's 7 minutes 100% of the time. Is that correct?
90% of the time.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody. Okay, 90% of the time.
Yes.
Great. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I should have explained that one. It's we're required to from 911 to someone showing up on scene is 7 minutes, 90% of the time. You know, through years and years of data tracking and analysis, we have just found, hey, the stations that we have, many of them were built in the 1942 to 1955 era, where the population, the base, that's where everything was at. You know, since then, our base has expanded, and where the stations are currently housed, it's not where they should be. So for us to meet this 7-minute standard just was not happening. No matter what we did, no matter how fast we drove, how fast our turnout times were. So something that we looked at, and we got a signed deviation from a commanding general, basically saying, hey, yeah, you guys at Pendleton, we understand the standard is 7 minutes. You guys are not able to respond within that standard. So for us, a more realistic time standard was 8 minutes and 30 seconds. And even then, we've been finding out as we've been kind of drilling down further, some of the FTZs, we are not responding even within that standard. You know? And so for us to go back, we have to reauthor a deviation next year in 2021 that 0830 time standard. We don't think that one's going to actually hold up either, and we're looking at changing that. Some of the things that we're looking at too is we are looking at some of their time standards, and versus a popular area versus, you know, a suburban or a rural area. So these are all things that we at Pendleton are trying to look at and come up with a plan for. But without the data, we would have a very hard time selling our case, especially to our governing body, who with finances, they are what they are. We cannot just say, hey, you know, we'd like a new fire station. We have to be able to show them, you know, hey, 65% of the time we are not making the standard in FTZ 6 or FTZ 7.
All right, we're nearing the halfway. We're nearing the halfway point, and just for our civilian participants, FDZ is a fire demand zone, and think of it as a geographical response area on a military installation. And yeah, excellent, Pete. We'll press on to the next slide.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. So something that I also wanted to speak on was so the systems we have, many of them won't speak to each other. You know, our records management system is one system, and CAD is a separate system. And for us in the federal government, unfortunately, our CAD system is locked behind a secure network, so it's very hard to exchange data and information between our records management system, which is emergency reporting, and CAD. And on top of that, you know, we have a separate system for our station alerting, 911, and then our PCRs also are on a San Diego system. So 4 different systems, none of them really speak to each other very well. So how do we extrapolate, you know, all the information that is housed in those systems? One of the things that we were looking at and that we found we are doing very well is our prevention and fire education efforts. You know, this is something that, and Tom, you might have the report. I don't remember now off the top of my head. You just showed me one about a week ago that will go and show all of our losses.
There is, yeah. There's also one of the reports, and I think it's a 900 series report. I'll have to double check that. But it not only talks about losses, but the language now is, what do we save? So, and that's easy math. You know, you can tell that story, but now the report tells that story. And so it might be 990 is the report number, everyone, that uses us. But yeah, that's, again, the language now is, yes, this is our average loss or total losses versus the potential. We call them potential reports, but now we want to talk about what you save, because that tells a positive story, right?
Exactly, you know, and so this slide in that chart unfortunately was done a few weeks ago, and I didn't have that new report, but that new report that you guys have, it really tells a lot better story. So all right, next slide, please. So something that we hadn't really looked at or even thought very much of is what time of day are we going out? You know, what time of day are we getting a call for service? And I'm sure that you folks have seen this, but for us, there on the base, most of our incidents happen in between 06:30 and about 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we get kind of a downfall, and then we get a smaller spike again around 1400 to about 1700. And we figured, hey, this is exactly when people are showing up to work and going home for the day. So for this very reason, we have come up with a plan that, hey, if the ambulance in certain stations, like Station 1's FTZ, Station 5's FTZ, if those ambulances are tied up on another incident, which you will see for us in the next slide, is about 50% of the time we have a second incident going on at the same time. That we have a policy that we will go and take an ambulance from a less busy part of the base and move them up. Times of high traffic as well, we will take one of our ambulances and have them go and stage in pre-positioned locations as well. So these are all things, again, that we have increased our service delivery, and we are providing a better level of service. And this is all based on our data studies that we have done. So next slide, please. Next
Should be good
slide,
to go. This is the last one.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
Oh, no, sorry. There we go.
I was going to say,
it didn't advance. There we go. There we go.
Okay, yeah. So like I was saying, 51% of the time we have a second incident going on at the same time. Something that we have been looking at specifically is how many times is that FDZ's fire station, are they responding? Are they the first ones at scene? You know, for us, again, FDZ 2, you could see they are responding on scene first to 90% of the time. 10% of the time, if something happens within that FDZ, they are getting a fire engine or the ambulance from another fire district or station. So, you know, in those cases, you could see, hey, like they took 13 minutes to respond, or 10 minutes. So these are all things that we are looking at and diving down even further. Like, hey, is this station in the right area? But then also, if something's going on and those guys are tied up, the next station in, how long is it taking them? You know, and how much is that really affecting the overall service delivery? We looked at this, and actually something we're going to implement next and beginning in January of 2021 is we are relocating a paramedic engine from one of our FDZs to another FDZ. You know, and this is all just based on hey, it's taking us 16 minutes to respond into this area. We have a paramedic over here, but we don't have one in the other area, right? So that paramedic could be better used somewhere else, you know. And at the time, we thought that paramedic engine was in the right location. Come to find out, no, they weren't. We could actually better use them somewhere else.
So Pete, it's pretty clear to see that, you know, data, you know, like we say, data drives the fire service, but humans are in the driver's seat, and it's clear you guys are in the driver's seat at Camp Pendleton, knowing the funding statement that you made, your percentage of funding, the challenges that you're facing, the large geographical area. If anybody Googles Camp Pendleton, you'll see what a large geographical response area that they have. And so you're using data to take intelligence out of what you're doing each day, and to make actionable items out of it, not just the feelings, not just the gut, you know, the hunches and the gut feelings, although those are important because the data will either verify it or refute it, and you've been able to make some substantial progress, knowing that the resources can be challenging at times, but you're making your case based on the data you're able to glean from the system.
Yes, yep, 100%.
Well, I'm grateful to you to share Camp Pendleton's experience in using data, both for managing the department, improving the department, and pursuing both accreditation and, in this case, reaccreditation. So thank you for that, the Marine Corps and West Coast perspective. And now we're going to go cross country over to Rich in Florida to get a civilian perspective. So Rich, we're going to go to you next.
Hello again. Tom, you can hear me okay still?
Yep,
I
you're
know we were
loud and
having
clear.
some mic stuff earlier. All right.
Yep, loud and clear.
So again, I work in Mount Dora, Florida. We're about 35 or 40 minutes away from Orlando. So we're right in the middle of Central Florida, right near Disney World, and we're experiencing a lot of that growth. You know, Orlando and Orange County are kind of towards reaching maximum capacity, and now we're seeing that big circle expand out towards our way. So where 15 years ago I started, you know, Mount Dora was a anytime USA, you know, closer to 10,000 people. You know, we're up to about a population of 14,500, and we'll in the next 10-ish years almost double that. There's a lot of growth and vacant land and orange groves that the city's annexing, where a lot of that growth is coming in. So just a little bit of background about our department and telling our story through accreditation, and especially to the stakeholders. You know, we started this process in 2016, like I had previously said, and we really had no methodologies for measuring performance, assessing any risks, and really had no idea what the public expected of us, or anything. Basically, we just kind of existed. So this process brought that into light, about what exactly we needed to do, how we needed to talk to our stakeholders, and kind of what they expect from us. So one of the things that we did is during the strategic planning process, I had just copied it from a consultant I saw that our Parks and Rec department used. They just created a SurveyMonkey survey. A lot of times we read other fire departments or anybody's strategic plans, and you know, we see maybe there was 10 or 20 stakeholders in there. And I thought, especially in Mount Dora, with the growth that we are experiencing and what we need out of this, I needed to think on a bigger scale. So I just got a subscription to SurveyMonkey and created an online stakeholder survey. We also did one for internal stakeholders, also for strategic planning, but I got about 700 responses back to our strategic plan. So all of this has been building into what our stakeholders expect, and then how we're going to move forward with that. So out of those, we got 3 really big bullet points. They said they want better response times, they want adequate staffing, and they want more community outreach and public education from us. And the first two, you know, not too much of a surprise, but there's a big disparity even in our community versus our neighboring communities, right? So we border a very rural area, those people, just their philosophy is that they don't like to pay taxes, and they don't go seek medical care. If their house is burning down, so be it. And if you show up to their house to you know, whether they're having a heart attack or stroke or anything, if you show up to their house, those are the people that say, I'm not going. If it's my time, it's my time. You know, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I don't want surgery, any of that type of stuff. So there's a really big disparity in, you know, Mount Dora being Anytown USA, and even just our neighboring jurisdictions, who the residents really, you know, they would rather not see fire services and much infrastructure and stuff like that. So I've been blessed to be able to work in a community that wants us to help them. They want better response times, and they want us out there in the community a lot more doing things. So you can move to the next slide, Tom. So the next couple of slides, I'm just going to talk about how we kind of went there. You know, it's really tempting. In emergency reporting has helped us with the data. You know, jokingly, my default mode would be to talk to our stakeholders and our council members just like I would the peer team. You know, start out with on Sunday afternoon driving around doing a community tour and getting really deep and down into the weeds in the nitty gritty of our department. And a lot of that information can get lost in them. You know, if I were just to sit down and read them, our community risk assessment standards to cover, while it's important information to convey to people, we have to take specific things from that and be able to communicate with people. The average citizens are not going to sit there and read a 100 or 150 page document. So how we convey that, our information and our needs to our community, and then what they expect to us, has been really important. So on this slide here, you know, just assessing our call volume and type by zone. And as you can see, I highlighted our central zone. So we just divided the city. We're about 10 square miles. So I divided the city kind of intentionally and unintentionally into 4 zones. They kind of loosely had an old way of tracking zones was just based by census tract. And when I kind of looked at the map, it didn't really feel right to me. So I just kind of been staring at a map, and our zones were previously based on census tracts, and then a little bit into fire station first due. And then I mapped them into kind of where we are now, and where the city's growing. So you can see I highlighted Mount Dora Central Zone. So that's just our downtown area with a little bit of residential stuff. But the Central Zone in Mount Dora is the lifeblood of the city. Again, we're Anytown USA, but we've really marketed the downtown area with the little shops and bars and places to get a beer and a drink of wine, and so somebody playing guitar on the side of the sidewalk and stuff. And the downtown area is also where we hold a large number of events. We'll have a couple large events that'll bring about 300,000 people in a weekend to the area. So it's not all at the same time, but throughout the weekend, people come and visit Mount Dora, and there's vendors and stuff like that. And then you can see other zones. I included a couple other cities because we have automatic aid agreements with some other cities that they place a high demand on us also. So you can see that our central zones are busiest area, and I'm building up to us being able to have some growth and stuff like that here. But our central zones are our busiest area. And then you can see the city of Tavares, city of Eustis, and Lake County. They put a higher demand on us than some of our zones, like the eastern zone and the northeastern zone. And in a couple of minutes, I'll get into the eastern zone of how we've measured where we're going, because that's where a lot of our growth is going to occur. Currently, it's just orange groves and open land, but there's a lot of development going in there with technology. A college campus has been looking at going in there, a hospital and stuff like that. So we're able to see kind of where we are and where things are quiet now, but where we need to go in the future. So you can go to the next slide, Tom. So in building up, especially that central zone, that's our highest call volume. That's where a lot of our fire risks are. We have some nursing homes. So again, just like any other town USA, especially in Florida, a lot of what we do is to assisted living facilities, nursing homes, elderly, 55 and over communities. So in assessing fire risks, we needed to go just beyond the high frequency, high risk, that 2-axis or 3-axis model, doing probability, demand, and consequence. And emergency reporting has a tool, the OVAP score, to assess your fire risks for buildings. So we went out. It took a while. We have about 1,000 occupancies in the city, so nothing crazy. But we sent the fire inspector and all the crews out to do OVAP scores on all of our buildings. And to no surprise, we found that the highest number of fire risks were in the central zone. Not to say we don't have them in other zones, but some of our other zones are like big box stores like Lowe's or Walmart or Target or something like that. And those older structures, some of them not protected, and those that are near and dear to the city and to the lifeblood of the city fall within this central zone. So you can go to the next slide, Tom.
Yeah, and Rich, to piggyback onto what you said, a couple comments here. OVAP stands for Occupancy Vulnerability Assessment Profile. I think we all like the acronym there, OVAP. It's a mouthful, but it does tell the story, and it is part of our vision product. And then one of the things I want to comment on to Mount Dora and Rich's program is not having 98% of your occupancies, regardless of if you have 1,000 or 20,000, because it's proportionate to typical resources. I know one of our Rich's neighbors, Orange County, they have like 20,000 occupancies, and they're like Rich. They have 98% of them have been given an OVAP score, and that takes time. So that's no small feat for any agency to get that high a percentage to get that picture. So definite props to you guys for the effort put forth into getting that done.
Thank you. So here, the next couple of slides, in telling our story, we needed to assess, property saved, and Pete and Tom talked previously about a couple of reports that are able to do that. So again, being Anytime USA, a lot of new growth in the area. We just don't see a lot of fires. Obviously, we still have to measure what it is that we do and how well that's performing. But we were able to look at our losses, our contents, content losses, and then property saved. One of the things here, one of the things that could have been easy to tell the peer team, especially through this process, is, well, we don't have a lot of fires. Well, all of us in the accreditation world know, well, you don't have a lot of fires, but still you need to measure your performance. How well is that performing? What's causing those fires? How can you prevent those fires? All that good stuff. So one of the things we found in this, when I started pulling these reports and emergency reporting, is the need for working with the company officers on documenting this. So not only has it turned into some justification of us, how we're going to measure our performance and communicate that to our stakeholders, but also in me pulling these reports and saying, if an officer didn't fill something in completely, if it seemed like there was some information that was lacking. So all of this is building up into even further training for our officers and firefighters to better document that stuff and have actually better reports. But again, this shows, as when I wrap things up, I'll talk about our fire stations, our growth, and us getting a safer grant and stuff like that. But in some of these, the city council wants to assess our performance and say, okay, so we got you all of these things and we're getting these things. How well are you doing? We're able to compare where we were for content loss and property loss as to where we were and where we are. And I know it's not necessarily a part of accreditation, but a very behavioral thing to do, especially for our communities, is, everybody wants to compare ourselves to each other, especially our neighboring jurisdictions. So obviously we're measuring things like, 90th percentile response times and things, but a lot of times, and once in a while, we do get questions from city council. Well, how about our neighbors? They're our closest friends and pretty easy to compare ourselves to. One of the things that emergency reporting officers is information sharing. So we have 12 fire departments in our county. We all use the same CAD, all use the same dispatch, and we all use emergency reporting. So one of the cool features is this feature called Agency Friends. So I can gather a lot of information and a lot of data from our neighboring jurisdictions, and just to appease city council. It is just one more layer. I can say, hey, these are similar cities, but they don't have the benefit of having the staffing, the fire station locations as we do. And I'm able to kind of quickly show, like, Mount Dora we get called to X amount of structure fires or fire events. This is our loss versus one of our neighboring cities. So again, it's nothing we do in the accreditation world, but sometimes those questions do get asked. So I've been able to pretty easily answer them. And you can go on to the next slide, Tom. So again, just kind of building that case and building that story. And again, it's part of our creating our standards of cover and community risk assessment is assessing critical infrastructure by zone. So one of the things that we found early on, it's a quick and easy tab within the occupancy module of emergency reporting, is a critical infrastructure dropdown. I can't remember specifically how many types there are. There's 10 different types of critical infrastructure, ranging from healthcare to emergency services to postal or government buildings and fuel and stuff like that. So as opposed to having to establish a methodology for how you're going to assess critical infrastructure and how you're going to classify it, we just simply use this. So during our interaction with the peer team, when they said, okay, where's your critical infrastructure by zone? What's your methodology for doing that? We were able to just quickly say this, and then obviously be able to utilize that for some relevant information. So for example, again, the central area, just being small town USA, a lot of that stuff lies within the central zone. So we were able to keep building this case of, a lot of our highest fire risks, like OVAP scores, our call demand, and then the critical infrastructure, a lot of that falls within the central zone. And then even beyond fire risks, especially in the Florida area, how do you secure that, or what is your critical infrastructure, not just for threats like terrorism or caused by people, but weather events, so like hurricanes, for example. Where's your critical infrastructure? Is that secured? What do you need to do to take care of that? So we can, in our comprehensive emergency plan, we're able to quickly just transfer that information over there to be able to use for planning purposes. So then I talked about being able to tell our story and what exactly is it that city council or our stakeholders kind of need, and what do they want to see? Again, I joked, but I could talk to our standards of cover all day with somebody, but they may not understand exactly what it means. So we have to kind of talk, we have to speak their language. So I've hit those at every council meeting that we've given. I've hit those bullet points over and over again. The community wants better response times, they want adequate staffing, and they want more community outreach in public education. So I've been able to quickly pull some reports. We report it quarterly. We just do some quarterly reporting. And as you can see here, it's just a quick graph that I threw in Excel. And I'm able to break that down quickly and easily by crew. So we have 3 shifts with 3 apparatus. We have 2 engines and a tower in service each day. And then I just kind of did a median to see where everybody else is. So I can break it down by crew and shift. And sometimes I've had to talk to a specific crew or a specific lieutenant, and kind of get on them and do some quality improvement, quality assurance measures there. I've used this graph also for city council in saying, physically, we need infrastructure speaking, our 4-minute travel time, we've got very low compliance for meeting our benchmark of 4-minute travel times. And you can move on to the next slide, Tom. But one of the things I've tried to show also is turnout time performance. So I've trying to hit it from both sides, in that we're in we have a unique opportunity because we're growing in this area to have new fire stations, but also behaviorally, we've been trying to work in reducing those response times. So it's not just going to be us for the next foreseeable future asking for money for fire stations or more apparatus. We're also trying to change our behaviors inside the fire station. So as you can see in these graphs, just assessing performance for turnout times for fires and EMS calls. And even with that, you can see, especially for the slide regarding turnout times for EMS calls, but for both of these, we were on a really upward trend with compliance for turnout time. So what gets measured gets improved, as we all know. But then what I noticed, interestingly enough, especially with the turnout times for the fire or for EMS calls, is second quarter just kind of dropped off. Second quarter of 2020 dropped off. Well, how can you account for that? What does that mean, and why did that happen? All of a sudden in the second quarter of 2020, your turnout times for EMS calls dropped off. What the heck's going on? Well, as we all know, COVID happened. So I can, probably explain that as guys are taking more time to put on PPE, their gowns, their N95 masks, all that stuff before they get in the truck, just like when we put on our PPE for turnout times for structure fires. I've also been able to do some, correlation by crew in that Station 34, which is our downtown station, usually has an engine in the tower. What we did because of COVID, just to try and spread crews out and reduce some of the risk, is we sent the engine crew to a separate location. So actually, they're in a location nearby where we're going to be building our 3rd fire station, but a local church was gracious enough. They have a large classroom area that all of it got shut down during COVID, and then of course spring break. They were gracious enough to let us relocate there for the past several months. So you're able to see, the turnout times obviously from a church was not designed for firefighters and the efficiency of getting out the door. So you can see some increased turnout times of the guys having to get from the classroom where we've got bunk beds into the truck. The truck is outside in the parking lot, so the doors are always locked because it's not a secure facility. So you can see you're able to correlate that and measure those things, and then be able to account for them. Pretty easy. So you can go to the next slide. So then I talked about earlier with our stakeholders, they wanted more community outreach. Fire prevention, smoke detector battery changes. We do stop the bleed classes and hands only CPR. But we needed to better assess, and I think it's a lot of, I've seen a lot of recommendations from peer teams, especially first-time agencies, as you assess, you address your emergency needs pretty well in your standards of cover and community risk assessment. But what about those non-emergency needs? What does the community want from you, and what does the community need from you, and how are you addressing those things? And Are you targeting specific areas by zone for smoke detector installations, or do you have increased fall risks within elderly communities? So how are you going to do that stuff? So a couple of the reports that, again, are quick and easy to pull and see some data on are the 1693, the cause of ignition for zone and date range. So, you know, one of our things is we don't have a lot of structure fires, but there's a lot of cooking fires. And that's obviously just a national trend from any report from the NFPA. But what can we do with that data? So again, I noticed that we have a lot of young, more inexperienced officers with QA and QI of reports. We need to do a better job of documenting what it is that we find so that we can improve our performance based on that. And then some, you know, a report like 1195, the presence and operation of detectors, of smoke detectors. So were smoke detectors present? Did they operate? Basically, basic NIFRS data is really easy to pull. And then we can utilize that data to go out and have some community outreach and do some prevention stuff. And then so lastly, through all of this and telling our story and hitting those 3 bullet points home of adequate staffing, community outreach and public education and better response times, in the December of 2018, we hired 12 firefighters to put in a tower truck in service. So we have 2 engines in a tower in service every day. At our downtown station, we have an engine in a tower. So we were able to use that all of that data in justification and community expectations to be able to justify putting the tower in service. Currently, like I said, we have 2 fire stations, and they're not in real ideal locations, especially our second fire station. It was built about 10 years ago, and it's literally built on the edge of our city limits, kind of where we make a triangle with 2 other cities. We're right in the middle of that intersection. So that engine responds probably 25 or 30% of their calls are in somebody else's first due area. So we're able to, you know, again, utilize methodologies and measure performance. And I can say that unit hour utilization is pretty low. So we're okay with running a lot of low risk, high frequency calls to those other cities first due. In turn, we rely on those other cities for our effective response force. So our methodology in I think it's category 10 for external relationships. I remember one of the things being asked is, how do you account for engine 35 going to other cities so much? And I said, well, engine 30, you know, their unit hour utilization is low. We go there for high frequency, low risk events, EMS calls, and we rely on those 2 cities to each send us a couple of engines. So they send us significant resources for the high risk, low frequency events like structure fires. And so that was my methodology for assessing that and moving forward. And obviously, if engine 35's unit hour utilization increased to the point where we can't take care of our own calls within our own city, we'd have to address that with those neighboring jurisdictions. But getting back to the fire stations, we were able to utilize all this data and the stakeholder expectations to, we're able to relocate, we've secured funding to relocate both station 34 and 35 to better locations to help us meet that 4-minute travel time benchmark. And then as we grow, we have plans to add a 3rd fire station in that eastern area. So, you know, as you can see, we don't have much call volume there now, but we're able to plan for where those fire stations will go in the future. And then lastly, regarding community outreach and public education, you know, we got our recommendations. Peer team visited last December. We got our recommendations just after Christmas and went before the commission in March. So one of the things we've been working on is some community outreach and public education. And of course, a lot of that came to a screeching halt with COVID. But emergency reporting has an events module where you can better document those non-emergency demands and how you handle them. And, you know, whether it be a public education event at a school, or hands-only CPR. So we're working on building that out, and as we get it built out and as we're able to actually go back out in the communities a lot more, that's our plan for being able to utilize that a lot. And I think that's all I have.
Rich, fantastic. Well, guys, we're at the just about the top of the hour. We want to respect your time, and we're grateful to everyone joining us today. There's our contact information. There's me with emergency reporting, Pete out at Camp Pendleton, and Rich out at Mount Dora. And I can't thank both of them enough for sharing their perspectives. You know, Pete from the Department of Defense and the Marine Corps Fire and Emergency Services, and Rich out at Mount Dora in Florida for their expertise, their experience, both in their departments with data management, with emergency reporting, and their leadership with their departments. So with that, I'll pass it over to Cindy to close, but thank you, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the Center for Public Safety Excellence Conference in March.
All right, well, thank you, Tom, and thank you all for attending today. There is going to be a couple of emails going out later today that will have the link to this recording, so you can share it among your departments or whoever you want to share it with. And if you have any questions, please, contact one of these gentlemen, or you can contact me as well if you need to. All right, well, thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll be talking to you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.